Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea podcast. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. And if you are a regular viewer or listener of the John Campea podcast, you notice, well, John, your show's only like 7 hours late today. Why is it so late today? Well, the reason this Friday edition is going up so very, very late is because last night at midnight, the new Netflix series, The Defenders, came online on Netflix. And I really wanted to do a review of season 1 this morning. So I was up till about 6 o'clock in the morning, binging. I got through about 6.5 episodes. And then I fell asleep for like 2 hours, got up, watched the next 2 episodes, did the review of The Defenders, and then I crashed. I just crashed out for a few hours and I decided, you know what? The podcast can wait. Because I thought if I do the podcast, I'm going to be doing the podcast like this. And I figured, that's no good for anybody anyway. So here I am, better late than never for this Friday. I'm going to have another podcast again tomorrow on Saturday as well. So keep your eye open for that. So this is how this podcast is going to work today. Not a whole bunch in the world of movie news, so I'm just going to take all of the questions that you guys have sent in to me. I've picked out 6 questions. You can look in the description of this video to see the 6 questions and some timestamps as to when they come about. But I encourage you, listen to everybody's question if you can. But how do you get a question to me? It's simple. Just email me anytime at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. That's thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. I picked out 6 of them today. So without any further ado, let's get into it. And we start with question number 1. And question number 1 today comes to us from Henrik Lange, who writes, "Greetings from Denmark." Well, hello from Denmark. "I look so much forward to the Justice League movie, and I want it to be great. But if Joss Whedon," you spelled it right, by the way, a lot of people still think it's Josh, but it's Joss. It's Joss. Anyway, but Joss Whedon is still doing reshoots, and the movie is so CGI heavy. Is it still realistic to get it through post-production on time? Would it not be better instead to postpone it until they have finished everything the way they want it? Yeah, you know, I've had a few people ask me about this recently because, look, as much as a lot of people have tried to deny it, the reshoots and the extra stuff they've been shooting on Justice League are far more extensive than were originally reported. But, you know, someone like me, here's the thing. That comes out and people saying, hey, the reshoots are a lot more extensive. And then some DC fans get all upset about that, saying, how dare you say that? You shouldn't say that. It's like, but me, from my point of view, I'm like, okay, that's great. I mean, to me, if the reshoots are going far more extensive than they originally said, to me that says Warner Brothers is really committed to making the best film they can. And that Warner Brothers is refusing to say, good enough. They're not. Warner Brothers has opened up the checkbook. They've spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on these reshoots. They've obviously committed a lot of time, resources to this. They're doing a lot more extensive reshoots. To me, as a fan of the DC movies, that's great. I mean, how can it be bad? How can anybody take this as bad news when the studio responsible for the movie is exhibiting and proving their 100% commitment to the movie and making the best movie they possibly can? I do not understand why people get their backs up and defensive when they hear that the reshoots are more extensive than originally thought. That doesn't necessarily mean what was going on before was terrible. Ignore the rumors about, the first cut was unwatchable. But just because they're doing extensive reshoots doesn't necessarily mean that what they had already shot was bad. All it might mean is that they came up with an even better idea. And instead of just going and Warner Brothers saying, oh yeah, that is a great idea. Well, too bad we already shot the other stuff. Warner Brothers is going, great idea. We'll sign the check. Here you go. Go make it happen. I think it's great news. Anyway, so the reshoots are still going on right now as we speak, by the way. So the reshoots and all the extra shooting is far more extensive than the original plan. So the question then is, look, November's coming. It's the middle of August. And they still got to reshoot all this stuff and then do the post-production on that stuff. Is November more realistic? Now, I kind of answered a similar question to this before a number of weeks ago. And although I said anything's possible, I was leaning towards, yeah, November release date, no problem. November release date, no problem. They'll be able to do it. The longer we go, and the longer we hear that these reshoots are still going on, it does become a little iffy. But here's what I believe, okay? I don't have any information on this. I'm just telling you what I believe, okay? I believe since Warner Brothers has already exhibited the 100% commitment they have to try to make this as good of a movie as possible, and that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is and they're ready to pull out the checkbook and do what they need to do, I have a feeling that if Warner Brothers, and I'm saying if, okay, if Warner Brothers begins to believe that sticking to that November release date will compromise the quality of movie that they can put out, if Warner Brothers starts to think, if we stick to our current release date, we are not going to put out as good of a movie as we know we can. If that's the scenario, I believe Warner Brothers has exhibited a big commitment to the quality of this film. I believe Warner Brothers will change the release date. And if we see that Warner Brothers changes the release date, it will once again go to prove that Warner Brothers is 100% committed to presenting the best movie possible to their fans. So that's just the way I see it. If I had to put money on it, I still think they're going to make that November release date. I still think they're going to do it. But each day that passes becomes more and more possible that they could eventually change that release date. But again, like I know if they do change the release date, everybody's going to be shouting doom and gloom. I just want to tell everybody in advance, if Warner Brothers changes the release date, take a deep breath, okay? Because I would much rather the studio change the release date than say, whatever, just put out what we've got. I would much rather Warner Brothers do that. So just don't get too excited. Let's wait and see what happens. We'll wait to hear what the announcements are. And once we know, then we'll react accordingly. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Henrik. The next question today comes to us from Joe Byrum, who writes, I've been following your show for a couple of weeks now and really enjoy the show. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. How would you feel if they had Jedi in the Han Solo movie? After all, Han did say he's never seen any proof of the Force. Well, I mean, yeah, that's one reason. The one reason you can't have Jedi in a Han Solo movie is because Han has said it's canon that I've been from one end of the galaxy to the other, kid, and I've never seen anything that made me believe in one all-powerful force controlling everything. Like, he said he's never seen it. So you can't now suddenly have a Han Solo movie where he sees force users. That would make no sense. That would make no sense at all. But beyond that, there's a bigger canon issue here. There are no Jedi. When the Han Solo movie's happening, there are no Jedi. I mean, yes, Obi-Wan is secluded on a planet somewhere, but he'd never met Han Solo before, so there goes that. Yes, you've got, the characters from Rebels out there. You've got Ezra running around, and, that's all fine too, but there's no evidence that they have ever crossed paths with Han. There can't be any other Jedi out there at the time. So yeah, for the reason you stated, the fact that Han has said he's never met a Force user, and for the reason I just stated, the fact that canon dictates there are no Jedi running around out there, and it's not like there's 50 other Jedi running around that Han could come across their path, I would be really against, wholeheartedly against. Dare I say, fuck that. No, the Han Solo movie cannot have Jedi in it. No way, no how. Not Kanan, not Ezra, not Obi-Wan. You cannot have Jedi in the Han Solo movie. So I'd be totally against it. So that's just my opinion, though. Maybe you have a different opinion. And if you do, that's cool. Jump into the comments section below and let me know why you think differently. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Travis, who writes, Hi, John. I was recently talking to a fan of the DC Extended Universe, and they called Joss Whedon a major setback for the DCEU. What a fucking ignorant fool. Anyway, they said that if Justice League did good, everyone would praise Joss Whedon. While if the movie did bad, then everyone... Sorry, this is Grizzly. You can barely see... Hey, Grizz. Hi, Grizz. Grizz is not my dog. Grizz is my friend's dog that I'm dog sitting for a couple of days for, and he's wonderful. He probably heard me laugh. I don't know how he opened the door. How did you open the door? How did you open the door by yourself? Okay, sit down. Sit down. That's it. Lay down. Good boy. Hey, sorry about that. So anyway, where was, oh yeah, I hadn't even finished reading the question yet. They said if Justice League did good, then everybody would praise Joss Whedon. Well, if the movie did bad, then everyone would blame Zach Snyder. Do you think this is the case? Okay, first of all, what an ignorant comment to make. What an ignorant comment to make about, oh, having Joss Whedon come on is a major step backwards for the DCEU. Hey, look, if you don't like Joss Whedon's films, that's cool. I mean, it's all subjective. Totally cool. Nothing wrong with you not liking Joss Whedon's films. That's totally fine. That's great. You look confused, Grizz. Oh, he wants so much attention. Hi, boy. Hi, buddy. I gotta finish my show. I gotta do my show, buddy. Okay, so anyway, if you don't like Joss Whedon, that's totally cool. If you have a certain opinion of him as a filmmaker, that's great. But to make a statement like getting Joss Whedon on is a major step back for the DCEU, maybe you can say, oh, that makes me nervous because I haven't liked his other films. Here's the fact. Okay, this is not what I'm about to say. All film is subjective, but what I'm about to say is not subjective. What I'm about to say is pure data-proven fact, okay? Fact number one. The Joss Whedon Avengers films are beloved by the majority of the movie-going public, okay? That doesn't mean you have to like them, not at all, but I'm just saying, fact number one, the vast majority of the movie-going public loves Joss Whedon's films, all right? Undeniable fact number two, Joss Whedon has only directed the two most successful comic book movies of all time. Not the one most successful comic book movie of all time, the two most successful comic book films of all time. Does that mean you're supposed to like them just because they made a lot of money? No. I'm not saying that. But I'm simply saying when you've got a filmmaker who has rich experience in making comic book films, and the comic book films he has made were one, beloved by the movie-going audience, and two, are the two single most successful comic book movies of all time, then you need to take a breath before saying something like, Warner Brothers hiring Joss Whedon is a major step backwards. Okay, then that just makes you sound silly. What doesn't make you sound silly is to say, I don't like the hire. That's fine. To say, that makes me worried because I don't like Joss Whedon's other films. That's fine too. That's totally cool. But to make a statement like, this is a major step backwards. Oh yeah, only the single most successful comic book director of all time. Yeah, major step backwards. You must be a genius. Anyway. I think that's a pretty stupid comment to make. Not that your friends are stupid, but hey, I'm not a stupid person, but I say stupid things. So do you. And so do your friends, apparently. So anyway, but on to the second part there. This isn't so stupid because this is something that a lot of people have been asking, and it's a fair question to ask. You know, if the movie turns out well, is Joss Whedon going to get the lion's share of the credit? I think the answer to that's probably yes. He will get it. Now, whether he should or not, that's another issue. Just asking, will he get the credit? Probably. Yeah, he probably will. If the movie turns out to be a disaster, will Zach Snyder take the brunt of the blame? Yeah, probably will. Again, I'm not saying whether that's fair or not. I'm simply saying you're right. He probably will. So the answer to that question is yeah, Joss will probably get the credit if it's good. Zach will probably get the blame if it's bad. Now, let's talk about whether that's fair or not. We have learned as more and more time goes on, and we are learning just how extensive the reshoots are. Again, I'm not paying any attention to that rumor about the first cut of Justice League was unwatchable. I'm not paying any attention to that. I'm not bringing that into this discussion at all. All I'm basing this on is the fact that as the more time passes, we're realizing that the reshoots and the extra footage being shot for Justice League is far more extensive than they originally thought. The more that goes on, the more reasonable it becomes that if the movie turns out to be great, it's more reasonable now to say, well, probably Joss Whedon probably had a lot to do with that. I mean, if Joss Whedon had only come in and done 2 weeks of reshoots or whatever, then no, that wouldn't be fair. That wouldn't be fair at all to give him the credit if it was just 2 weeks. But it's turned into months. All right? These reshoots have turned into months. And so the longer this time goes on and the more they shoot, I'm not saying it automatically means Joss Whedon should get the credit, not at all. But I'm saying it's becoming more reasonable the more he has to reshoot that he would get at least a portion of, if not the majority of, the credit. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have already seen that Zach Snyder had put out a Batman vs. Superman movie that a hell of a lot of the fans didn't like. I did. I gave the movie positive review, and I don't care who doesn't like that. I like Batman vs. Superman, but a lot of people didn't. And that doesn't make me insecure in my opinion, just to acknowledge that a lot of other people don't share my opinion. But a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of the critics didn't like it. And the concept that a Batman versus Superman movie would not crack $1 billion worldwide, that seemed inconceivable before the movie came out. Absolutely inconceivable, as Vincini would say. It still made over $800 million. It made a hell of a lot of money. It's a very successful film. But considering that that movie happened and it, at the very least, disappointed on a number of levels, then that if, Justice League disappoints as well, it's not irrational then to want to put some of the blame on Zach Snyder. But I hope people are thoughtful about it. Like if the movie, for all we know, the movie was already on really good footing and was already going to be good, and they just then came up with some ideas recently that allowed Joss Whedon to come in and make it even better, and I hope that everybody gets credit. And now, like I said, the more reshoots they have to do, though, giving more credibility to giving credit to Joss Whedon, I think the longer these reshoots go on also increases the amount of possibility that some of the blame needs to land on Joss Whedon's doorstep if the movie doesn't turn out well. Again, if Joss Whedon went in and just did 2 weeks of reshoots and the movie turned out to be a stinker, then yes, all the blame should go to Zack Snyder. But the longer, we're now in months of reshoots, if the movie still turns out to be sucky, maybe Zack deserves some of the blame, but you cannot then say Joss Whedon is blameless. Yeah, he wasn't there from the beginning, but he's had months of reshoots to make this a good movie. So if it turns out to be bad, he's got to take some of the blame too. So it's a great question. It's going to be something that I'm sure that we all debate about for the upcoming months until after the movie comes out, and even then long after the movie comes out. But it's something for us to keep our eyes on. Good question. All right. The next question comes to us from Jace Little. And Jace Little writes, "Hey, John, big fan. Thank you so much, Jace. Can you explain why studios predetermine release dates for movies? Shouldn't they focus on getting the best movie they can instead of hitting a specific date? I know that they can always change the date if need be, but don't see much upside for choosing a date so far in advance." Well, thanks a lot for the question, Jace. And yeah, it's absolutely necessary. The release date is a major part of strategy with a distribution company. For the distributor of a film, when to release this film is a key important factor. When you don't put a particular movie out in the right time of year for that movie, it can be disastrous. We've seen examples. I'm sure you can probably think of a couple of films off the top of your head where a movie that was good and deserved better just got released at the wrong time and it didn't do well because of that. I think of recently, War for the Planet of the Apes. That movie is not doing well for what a War of the Planet of the Apes movie should be doing. And not 100%, but I lay a lot of the blame on that, on the fact that they chose to release the movie 1 week after Spider-Man Homecoming. On just Spider-Man Homecoming's second weekend? Really? That was a terrible decision. Terrible decision. Especially since a lot of the demographic that are into the Planet of the Apes movies are also into comic book movies. So that seemed like a disastrous idea in the first place. So yes, the distribution companies, they mainly want to focus on the biggest decision they need to make is when do we release this movie? That's the biggest decision they make, and that's the most important thing. Now, also don't forget, a lot of times, probably the majority of times, the production company of a movie doesn't decide when the movie gets released. The distribution company does. Now, sometimes in the case of Disney or in the case of a Warner Brothers, sometimes Warner Brothers produces the movie and they're the distributor and they can make the decisions themselves. But much of the time, the production company is separate from the distribution company. So it's the distribution company that says when they want to release the film. So yes, it is important for them to predetermine a release date. Now, remember this too, though. They set the release date quite often after the movie's done production, they get their hands on, or when they already know what the production schedule is. So they get the production schedule. They haven't started shooting the movie yet, but they get the production schedule and say, okay, they're going to start shooting this movie in January. They're going to be done shooting it at the end of March. They say they need 4 months for post-production. So anytime after March, April, May, June, July, anytime August or later, they're saying they're good for us to set a release date. Okay, let's sit down, take a look. We'll set a release date for November. Great. So they set the release date. They begin putting their marketing plans in place and all that kind of stuff. So when you say in your question, isn't it more important to get the movie right? Well, remember, just because movies like Justice League and Star Wars movies and Marvel movies have all the money in the world to go back for tons of reshoots, 90% of movies do not. Movies have a budget, and they have a shooting schedule that's built around that budget. And they have to finish in that schedule, or else they go over budget and they don't get their movie made. Yes, there are some examples and exceptions like Justice League, like Star Wars Rogue One, like Marvel movies that plan reshoots because they're big, humongous, giant blockbusters so they can do that. But 90% of the movies out there do not have that luxury. 90% of the movies out there, once they set their they got their script done, they set their shooting schedule, they build their budget around it, the budget gets approved, they got to stick to it now. So if they tell the financiers, hey, yeah, here's our schedule, here's our budget, and the financiers give them the money for it, and they tell the financiers, we're going to be able to deliver this movie by March 23rd, man. March 23rd, you damn well better than deliver that movie on March 23rd. Or else you're done. You're finished in this business. It is not good to go over budget on a studio if you expect to keep getting work. So yeah, so just understand that the schedules get set. They have to stick to the schedule. They have a budget that they can't break. And that's when the distributor plans their release dates around and everything's good. So yes, the system as it is in place is the right system and it works. Anyway, I hope I didn't. I feel like I over-confused that issue. I hope I didn't. Forgive me if I did. All right, we move on now to the last question of the day. And the last question today comes to us from Robert Dean, who writes, "Hi, John. Hope you're well. I am very much. Thank you so much. So I know that the reaction to the trailers for Marvel's Inhumans have not been positive, and many are insisting that the show will be a turd. What do you think about Inhumans at this point? Will you give it a chance? And do you think people are too quick to judge the show by trailers alone? Thanks." Well, there's two separate questions there. One, what do I think of Inhumans? I don't think the show looks very good. I just don't. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to give it a chance. I'm absolutely going to give it a chance. I think Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. sucks, but I still watch it every week that it comes out because I keep giving it a chance because I'm a sucker for comic book stuff. So I keep watching it, even though, and then I hate myself a little bit after each episode that I watch. I do the same thing with Arrow. I mean, the people convince me to get back on Arrow and start watching Arrow, and I don't like it. I don't think it's very good right now, but I keep giving it a chance every week. I don't think Inhumans looks very good. Now, you asked the question, how did you word it here? You asked the question, is it fair that, do you think people are too quick to judge a show by trailers alone? Well, look, here's the thing. Nobody's judging the show based on the trailers. People are judging the trailers. And that's fair. To say, I get so tired of whiny fanboys who go, if I say that movie looks terrible, I don't think the movie looks very good, the trailers have been bad. And they go, how can you judge a movie before you've seen it? I'm not judging the movie. I haven't seen it. I'm simply saying I don't think the movie looks like it's going to be any good. There's a difference between what I think it will be in advance and what I think it is once I've actually had a chance to see it. Those are two different things. It is totally fair to have a prediction on how good or bad you think a movie will be based on this material you've seen. That's totally fair. If it's not fair to say, I think this movie looks terrible before you see it, then you're not allowed to say, I think this movie looks great. It's got to go both ways. So I think having an opinion about how you think a movie will be in advance, or in this case, a TV show will be in advance, totally fair to have an opinion based on the material you've seen. As long as you understand that you're not talking about how good or bad the movie actually is. until after you've seen it. Once you've seen the movie, then you can start giving opinions on what you think the movie is. Before you've seen the movie or TV show, it's only fair to make an opinion on how you think it will be. And right now, my opinion is that Inhumans will be bad. That's just my guess right now. But then again, I thought the, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would be bad, and I ended up really liking it. So, that happens all the time. The important thing here is it's okay to have expectations, positive or negative, but then when you go to watch the show or when you go to the movie theater, leave your expectations at the door and then judge the movie, not on the trailers, judge the movie on the movie itself. Anyway, that's just the way I see it. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for this installment of the John Campea podcast. I'm never shy to be opinionated about bigger issues. Thanks a lot for joining me. Hey, listen, if you're one of the people who are one of my Patreon supporters, thank you especially so much for your participation, your support in this show. If you're interested in becoming one of my Patreon supporters, look in the description of this video. You'll see a link to my Patreon page to get more information. Hey, listen, while you're here, click the subscribe button, become a subscriber to the John Campea YouTube channel, and make sure you're following me on social media. Just follow me on Twitter at John Campea. That'll do it for me, guys, for today. Thanks so much for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.